Mr. Clerk, the time is 6:02. I call this Budget Committee meeting to order. The Town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of these territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? We are having presentations by each of the departments today, and they're just being received for information. We won't be accepting any amendments on the table tonight. Amendments will be happening as we are aware through what we approved at council in October. Amendments will be brought forward for the November 27th meeting. Yep. Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councilor Gardner, seconder. Councilor Weiss. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. No delegations. Go into the items. 6.1. 6.1.1, which is council, which is binder tab 6. Presentation to be provided by Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. It says Mr. Nadarosny, but I know you're going to be doing it. So thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm just going to provide an overview of the mayor and council budget. Okay, so this shows an overview of the budget for council administration and the various committees that also sit under the mayor and council's budget, and the permanent staffing that the town has that excludes any of the elected officials. So there's only the one position, no new ones are proposed in this budget. When we look at the overview of what's included in the mayor and council budget for increases over the next 3 years, the key things that are changing is there are COLA for salaries and benefits, increases in each of the 3 years. There's also a reduction to the contribution for the economic development reserve. So right now, the amount of money that's sitting there for expenditures, I believe, is $100,000 for economic development. That is decreasing over the years as the expenditures are not decreasing, but it's fully funded from tax stabilization. We are slowly weaning ourselves off that tax stabilization. So that will happen over this 3-year period. And then there's some other small inflationary adjustments. And that is it for the mayor and council budget.
Thank you. Councilor, someone want to receive this for information? Councilor Gardner, seconder. Councilor Kim. Comments or questions for Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel? Councilor Gardner.
Hi, could I, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Van Kessel? So that money for economic development had a purpose at one time? It's not just sitting in the fund for no reason, that $100,000?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe it was either last budget or the previous one where we set aside $100,000 for economic development to use should it be required, and the development corporation is getting more established. At that time, what we did was we proposed to have it paid for or funded through the tax stabilization reserve.
Right.
But what we're planning on this budget is to actually wean the tax stabilization reserve off that fund or for paying for that economic development.
So it would come out of somewhere else, should we need it?
It would be on tax levy.
On taxes. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 6.1.2. Office of the CAO. This is binder tab 7. And I believe Carly is going to be presenting for us. Welcome, Carly. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. On behalf of the CAO this evening, I have the pleasure of presenting the Office of the CAO's 2024 to 2026 budget. Some of our high-level 2023 accomplishments are completing the Resident Satisfaction Survey, which is the first statistically valid broad-based satisfaction survey that the town conducted in over 15 years. We oversaw the development of the development and implementation of the town's new street banner program. And that sets a framework for the use of the street pole assets for both the town and community groups. And providing leadership and strategic support on major projects and initiatives, including Aurora Town Square and the town's Measure What Matters program based on objectives and key results. And because you have me up here this evening, I'll add a couple of communication highlights. We saw a 50% increase in our e-newsletter subscribers, and our YouTube channel subscriptions grew to over 900, which is nearly double that of Newmarket. Our social media following across all channels grew to over 30,000, meaning that we have the most social media followers per capita among all York municipalities. In 2024, our key objectives include implementing the multi-year strategic communications plan, which will come to council in mid-January. We'll continue to provide large project support to Aurora Town Square and the Stark Gymnasium projects, and continue with the implementation of the town's new alternative work arrangement policy. We'll continue leadership development with the executive leadership team and management, and a leadership development framework and key performance indicator framework are well underway already. The Office of the CAO includes corporate communications, and this slide just shows how the budget is distributed between communications and the CAO's office. There are no new FTE requests in this budget. Proposed budget changes. So the operating budget for the Office of the CAO proposes an increase of $118,800 in 2024, mostly due to salaries and benefits increases for existing staff. The 2024 budget does include a temporary position that supports projects and communications, which is fully funded from the Safe Restart grant and has no impact on the tax levy. The increases in the following 2 years are also driven primarily by salaries and benefits for existing staff, resulting in a total increase of $49,200 in 2025 and $46,800 in 2026. And finally, the proposed capital budget. So the Office of the CAO has no new capital requests, just the continuation of the organizational structural review project in 2024. And that's it for the Office of the CAO.
Thank you. And a motion to receive. Councillor Kim, Councillor Gardner, any comments or questions for Carly? Councillor Gardner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, where did you say the new staff was being funded from?
Sure, the staff member is just a continuation of my mat leave contract, and that's funded through the Safe Restart fund grant that we received.
Councillor?
Okay. No, it should be, there should be a little star or something.
Councillor, you have any other questions?
Oh, no, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious as to why we don't have at least a line item that shows that, so we have some accountability of that position and where that funding comes from. Because I certainly would like to see that. So that was new information to me. It's not that I'm disagreeing that we have that position, but if we don't have it here on paper, we don't know about it.
Carly? Oh, Ms. Ryan,
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So on page 7.6 of the budget binder, it does identify the funding that is to support these communications projects. And the work is also discussed in the budget section for the Office of the CAO.
Councillor?
Thank you. So on page 7.6, could you point me to the specific?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's this in the table incremental budget changes. The second line in white, it shows the 104,000 that's being used from the Safe Restart Fund to pay for this position. And then the reversal of that funding in the following year.
Councillor?
Thank you. So I guess the question that we have to ask as council is, what is funding from the restart programs. We understand what's being utilized. Is there anything else within that Safe Restart funding that we should know about that might not be listed here, other than a position?
Commissioner Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's nothing else in the CAO's office. There's the continuation of some temporary resources in IT that continues from this year into next year. And that I believe is, and I'd have to confirm if there's anything else, but I do not think there is off the top of my head.
Counselor?
Thank you. So specifically within the CAO budget, the 104 is a reflection of the salary for the one person. 104 for the person that's going to be up until the end of 2024. Is that the term?
Commissioner Van Kessel? Oh, Carly?
It's not quite until the end of 2024. It falls just a few months short.
Okay,
Counselor?
thank you.
Counselor Reese?
Just a question on the capital budget. Could you just give me an example of what these studies are all about, the 125 that is there? Sorry.
Harley?
you- Harley, through you.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we have the organizational structural review and the resident satisfaction survey, I think you're referring to.
So, Mr.
In the-
Matarazzi, I see you turned your camera on. Did you want to add anything to that? Can't hear you, Doug.
How's that?
That's better.
Sorry. To you, Mr. Mayor. That's the funding that was set aside for organizational development. So this is the work we've been doing with JUICE, Mr. Brady Wilson, and so on. And is primarily work that's been done between the community, the corporate management team and the ELT in terms of leadership development.
Counselor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Pardon? That carries. I'm assuming nothing's gonna fail when we're just receiving for information, but you never know. Next, 6.1.3, Community Services. It's binder tab 8. Presentation to be provided by Ms. McDougall. Ms. McDougall, welcome. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. She's just pulling it up. I'm happy to present to you the community services budget, operating and capital budget for 24 to 26. Just some of the highlights. There we go. Just some of the highlights. Obviously, there are additional ones to these. We're quite a large department. They'd be found on tab 8, pages 4 and 5. But these are just some of the highlights. Commencing in phase 1 of the construction of the Sark Gymnasium, launched the new community partnership grant program. We unveiled the Korean War Memorial located at Aurora's Peace Park. Completion of the digital sign at various facilities. In addition to that, for facility work, we had our cooling tower replacement and ice plant refurbishment at the Sark. Hosted Team Sweden, a very exciting event this year for Aurora, the International Ice Hockey Federation Women's Tournament. Created spaces at events to accommodate individuals with sensory and accessibility challenges, and completed our Parks Recreation Master Plan update for the next 5-year cycle. The objectives, again, they're more extensive. You'd find them on tab 8, pages 26 and 27. Here are just a few highlights. We look to complete the construction of Aurora Town Square, host the grand opening, and obviously open the building to the public. Construction of the Sark Gymnasium to near its completion by year end. Expansion of the civil ceremony wedding program. Strategies to recruit and retain part-time staff. This is an area industry-wide we're finding a bit difficult, so we need to focus on the strategies to help improve that. Incorporate facility asset condition assessment study into a multi-year maintenance plan. Complete the cultural action plan and public art master plan. Both of these are coming before council in March of 24. Advance recommendations of the sports field development strategy and update the sport plan. Last time it was looked at was in 2015. and support and review and update our CRM system. This stands for the Customer Relations Management System. Looking at our departmental budget, this is broken down by division. We have in our department, obviously the Director's Office, Access Aurora, Business Support Services, Cultural Services, Facilities Management, and Recreation Services. This summarizes our budget over the 24, 25, and 26 year. It also shows you a summary of the staffing requests. In 2024, 5 of those 7 are town square related, and they were highlighted in previous reports to council, but I can get into that in a bit. Proposed budget changes. Looking at the highlights for our department over the next 4 years. Certainly a salary COLA has impacted our department, but we are quite a large department with at the moment 73 full-time staff. Obviously, we are anticipating utilities and heating increases. Facility contracts and services for cleaning and repairs and maintenance has gone up. We are at the moment, and some of these of retendering at this phase, we're finding the new bids coming in are higher than historically, just simply with inflation. Special events, we have special inflationary pressures hitting our events as well, just based on contracts, equipment required, and so on. The allocation of town square funding supported through the communications department. This is funding that's already in our budget. We're just shifting it from our budget over to communications in support of the communications position that we have. Community partner grants and inflation related to our 3 cultural partners. This will be covered again next week during their presentations. We have additional revenues coming in, transaction fees for ActiveNet. We see, and with a shifting of the cultural and society postage savings, naturally not as much being mailed out, more electronic and website communications. And then also in a previous report communicated to council, our sports dome revenues will see an excess of revenues, and we're putting towards those additional funds towards asset management. Continuing on, as we do, we have some facility lease pressures happening with additional revenues net safe recovery grant. This is phasing that grant out. Sponsorship advertising, we see an increase in that in the first year. Rental revenues, there's a bit of a shift in this. Rental revenues, there's a swing. That we had predicted an overestimate in 2023. We were a little more optimistic maybe than we'd hoped, but in 23, however, we're shifting that back and being more, correcting that error as of 25. You'll see that shift from 1 down and then returning that back up where we anticipate the revenues in rentals. Community programs, rent revenue and net for that program. Obviously, this is seeing a significant increase. Pleased to say 2024 was budgeted based on 23 actuals. 23 revenues were much higher than budgeted. So it's one of those that it's a little hard to very specifically direct and predict, but it's kind of running and we're riding a bit of a wave. Community programs, capital funding for facilities. This is certainly something that we have anticipated for our projects and initiatives, as well as other minor adjustments. At the bottom, capital operating. Again, these figures were demonstrated in previous council reports from September 25th. There are your 5 positions as noted for the staffing. The 352 relates to that pressure that we had summarized for council net revenues. So there's an extra 350,000 that we were seeking from council on top of the 720. And this line item just demonstrates how that would be funded over the next 3 years. Obviously, Safe Restart will help, it's not Safe Restart, correction. Tax rate stabilization funding will help balance that out over the next 3 years. And then the last line there being the Sark Gym facility costs, program staffing, and so on, is it we anticipate opening that in 2025. Keep going, our budget keeps going. And maintenance service levels, as well as enhanced and transformation. So here we get into some staffing. In addition to the town square components. The asset management is one that we're focused on. You'll notice here, even though it's in a full FTE, there's a small budget impact. This is primarily due to the net position being supported and funded because this position will be overseeing R&R work, repair replacement. Therefore, capital funding will help offset this position. The next position is a current part-time position being uplifted to a full-time. Taking this, it's our museum collection support. This position was on the radar in 2019, but with the Town Square project coming along, we took a pause on this request until now. But now that Town Square is coming back online very shortly, we need this extra time of that staff position going from 28 hours a week to 35 hours a week. HVAC position, this one is not being seen on the budget until 25. However, it is fully funded or covered by cost savings by administratively and cutting back on our contracts, ultimately bringing this work in-house and having a savings on our operating budget. The last couple of lines here, Cultural Center's historic base top up. This is something that council may recall, and you'll see it again next Monday evening in the Cultural Center's presentation. This is something that has been tabled before council in the past. We have funded it from the Town Square Reserve. We now believe it needs to be funded from the taxpayers. This has to do with the COLA and staffing raises over the duration of that time that we've been out of Town Square. And then finally, the cultural services programming delivered in partnership with the Cultural Center. This 150,000 again was summarized in previous Town Square reports. This was the additional role that we were looking for Town Square to support us in the production component of Town Square, the specialized work related to tech support, related to front of house. And this is a line item that has now been shared previously with council. And this last one is, although small, again, societally, we're switching. Less interest in and need for hand magazine or guide. It's moving our online service or our recreation guide to online services. Keeping in mind, we will certainly print the pages people might need if they prefer it in paper form. Overall summary of our capital budget. For here, the main thing and point is that we have an increase of 1.6 million. Almost there. Increase of 1.6 million for a total of capital budget authority of 7.9 in 24. And then these ones are just some high level. Again, there'll be more within the tabs, but these are some of the key capital projects coming over the next span of in 2024. The AFLC Arena Dehumidification Program, Town Hall roof replacement. This is simply phase 1. We anticipate there's going to be phase 2. Cultural Action Plan implementation, Town Hall accommodation plan, and sport plan update. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to receive? Councilor Thompson, second, Councilor Kim. Any comments or questions? Councilor Gilliland.
Thank you. Just for the sake of transparency, could you explain what the COLA is for 2024, 2025, 2026? So the public understands what that means.
Google.
Sorry, get closer to the microphone. Thank you through Mr. Mayor. The COLA increases is something you'll see on every one of our budgets as it relates to cost of living, associated costs for salaries. And so the percentage increase would be applicable to any and all staff. It's something that is applied to all employees.
Councilor.
Thank you. And what is that amount? Based on the, I think it's in your chart.
Oh, are you looking for the total? Or you, oh, okay.
If you have, do you know the percentage, that would be great too.
Oh, well, that's what I thought you were after. Sorry about that. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So through you, Mr. Mayor, if you're referring to page 5 of my presentation, the line I think you might be speaking about is the base salaries and benefits, including COLA, step increases and gapping. Is that right? So 2024, our budget would increase in salaries by 659,000. In 2025, 373. And in 2026, 385. And this is more than just COLA, just to be clear.
Councilor.
Thank you. And I appreciate in 2024, that is because it includes the extra staffing that's being proposed. That's why it's a lot higher in 2024, correct?
Ms. McDougall, I see Ms. Rainer Van Kessel shaking her head. No.
Thank you. Perfect. I appreciate it as I didn't think so well.
Councilor.
Thank you. And just for clarity, the staffing that you're proposing for 2024 is full-time as of January 1st, correct?
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the 5 positions that are accounted for here in Town Square as originally proposed within our budgets and plan projections were to start January 1 for Town Square. We anticipate, obviously, doors will not be open at that point. We anticipate phasing those 5 in on an as-needed basis as we progress with opening the doors. The other positions would be planned for as of July 1. So it's half the year.
Counselor?
Thank you. And the phasing in approach, if you could give me some sort of type of estimation, given the fact that the facility is not expected to be open till spring, it's comforting knowing that we can delay any of these salaries as best we can.
Ms. Wainwright, Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly through our team, we anticipate phasing those positions in. And what we mean by that is in the timing of Town Square, it is a bit of a move and a shift. Right now, we're projecting for a spring opening with keys in hand. We'll keep monitoring on a regular basis. We will therefore post these positions at an appropriate time once we get closer to actually knowing when the key will be in our hands. The goal for typically for facilities would be to have them at minimum 2 to 4 weeks in advance. So they're well-trained and prepared, ready for the doors open, whatever that start date is. Customer service on a similar basis. We anticipate starting them up, ensuring somebody's there to answer phones and preparing for taking bookings and registration. So it is a bit of a shifting target, but we are monitoring and certainly will not post until we're certain of when that key will be in our hands.
Counselor?
Thank you. And I know we had spoken before about this, and I felt that with the maintenance staff and the facility operators, because you are looking for 2, that perhaps that could be something that's phased in as we slowly open versus hiring all at once at the time of opening. Is that still something that would be something that your department could consider in order to phase in?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our biggest challenge will be to ensure we have the staff in place, or staff, there's 2 ideally in place anytime we're open. Clearly, it's a big complex, and to ensure we have somebody that can be accommodating on 22 Church Street needs as well as library needs. That being said, from a phasing perspective, we can certainly consider bringing on, instead of a full-time immediately, utilize and support it with part-time backfill until there's guaranteed of a commitment of a need for full-time requirements. That is certainly something we can manage.
Counselor?
Thank you. That's definitely something that I would like to see happen. I understand that you have a part-time employee who's currently participating in the following duties, and that is the Pet Cemetery, the Museum and Archives, and the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. And I wanted to know what that bump up was from that salary to understand the hours worked and just to understand that position. And to clarify that a portion of that is 20,000 that goes towards the Sports Hall of Fame as its allocated responsibilities. And so if you can touch on that, that would be great.
Ms. McDougall?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, this position is currently titled our museum assistant. We are looking to adjust it based on the functions this individual actually does currently. This position is a 28-hour per week position, part-time. They do support those organizations as mentioned. You would typically, this role would typically be responsible for pulling together an exhibit. In Sports Hall of Fame's case, they're the ones responsible for setting up and managing their display cases of all of their materials coming from the inductees, as well as supporting the collections of material from the inductees, assisting with the interviews of those inductees, as well as preparing the supporting with preparing the documents as per the guide that is prepared by the Sports Hall of Fame. So it's more on the technician side. And that goes for, therefore, why we wish to shift it to a technician role, because that is predominantly what this particular role does. Therefore, when we see the shift to opening up Town Square and with the large quantity of archives coming back to us, and we have a number of display cases throughout Town Square as prepared, in addition to a 2-sided glass wall display case, this individual will also be responsible to ensure those are rotated on a regular basis and the archival documents, as well as the archival pieces, are well cared for and prepared and displayed accurately.
Counselor?
Thank you. So it's an indirect added responsibility to Town Square. What is the bump up to and from? I know that I had asked you that question before. I know it goes up to 21, an extra 21,000. I just wanted to understand the difference.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if you're looking on page tab 8-16, summarizes the salary position. So being that this position, it wouldn't be topped up, let's say the extra time until July 1, you're seeing in 2024, a total of $21,000. The other half of that would be imposed as of 2025. So all told, this part-time top-up is a total of 42,000. This includes, and a reminder, our part-time benefits averages about 17% for benefits. Moving somebody to full-time means that we have a 28% benefit plan. So there's an increase in the benefits on that position as well. And that's why it seems more significant for simply going up 7 hours a week.
Counselor?
Thank you. So the question I was asking is currently what is the salary now? And I know what it's going up to. So what is the current salary today?
Ms. McDougall? Wainwright, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So right now, currently in the 23 budget, we have 42,600 for this position as part-time salary. And then it increases to 94,000, and a substantial chunk of that relates to benefits and is not just the salary component.
Counselor?
Thank you. But the 42.6, is that including the benefits or no?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, that's not include benefits.
Counselor?
Thank you. The other question I had was about, and I'm sorry I didn't have this offline, was the AFLC dehumidification, I can't speak, I can't say that word, the dehumidifier for that rink. And I know that's been a constant problem in that rink. And I understand that it will be a costly investment. Is this going to fix the problem?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel? Oh, sorry. You guys got me going back and forth from each of them.
That's okay.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is obviously identified as a significant improvement where we have the issue, and I don't want to be too technical here. If I get too technical, I might have to call upon my manager behind me to be a little bit more specific. But however, this is a specific to and where we're seeing most of our issues is with the dehumidification systems. They were undersized and are undersized. They need to be brought up to speed and size to help with that capacity and try to pull out that humidity in the air. We do anticipate this to significantly improve where we're seeing, obviously transitioning from the summer months, you're trying to maintain the cold inside, yet it's really hot outside. And that's why you're seeing in the pictures that humidity buildup. These, an improvement of these with an appropriate size will hopefully improve that. However, there is additional phases that need to be done in that facility with an improved roof, as well as the possibility of improving the wall space between the pool and the arena. This is definitely a significant component of the problem.
Counselor?
Thank you. And so I just caught you said the pool. So I know there's been some issues with the ice pad, which has been a major issue for a lot of the programmed ice skating groups that go there. Is this going to address that problem?
Ms. McDougall?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll point out on page 16-33, the recommended recommendations to be included in the scope. If this is hopefully helpful. The first bullet, the arena dehumidification system is what's included in this 825,000. The remaining 3 bullets are what we believe to be the recommended next steps. So there is pool HVAC work to be done in the future. However, we feel that there is additional understanding and study to be done on the roof, as well as the existing system in the pool before we press go and bring a budget to council. So it's a multi-phased approach. We'll classify. Or is he? Okay. Yeah. There, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
More technical.
Mr. Bertrand, welcome.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Robin's correct. The first phase is to deal with the humidification. Once we can get the moisture out of the building, and then we can deal with the rest. But there's damage to the roof as a result of the moisture. So we've got to dry the building out and then assess the roof as to how to repair the roof. but you can't repair the roof if the moisture is still present. So the first thing we have to do is get rid of the condensation, which is coming from the ice rink.
Could you speak into the microphone a
Sorry.
little closer,
The
please?
first thing we have to do is get rid of the condensation out of the ice rink to dry up that side of it. And then look at the roof as to the damage that the roof has done. The roof is deteriorating because of the moisture. But again, we have to get rid of the moisture first, which means replacing the dehumidification equipment.
Counselor?
Thank you. Well, let's hope that that works.
In the rink, it'll stop the dripping, it'll stop the fog, it will clean up the rink.
Okay. That's
Counselor?
what I want to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you. The other question I had was about the sport plan. And I understand that while we may not have done one for a while, we did hire new staff fairly recently to help address some of the plan that we had that was put together back then. Is this something that could wait?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the sport plan was achieved and completed 2015 with an implementation of 2016. And typically plans last for approximately 5 years. Yes, we have a staff member that has been implementing the sport plan as directed and including those number of recommendations that are in it. A lot we felt has changed even in the sport world and society since 2015 and 2016. And we were looking to this study to include those components in our next set of recommendations. Much like our Parks Recreation Master Plan, it was done for a period of time. We need to have another look at society and in this case, our sport to prepare us for the next phase. The current staff member definitely is doing a great job of implementing the existing sport plan and we continue to do so. We just feel this would hone in on some of those things that have become even more prominent, more prevalent, like DEI, like safe sport, that have become more today's pressures, today's concerns in sport. And therefore this plan would help identify that. It's always beneficial as a staff member to have a plan that you can point to that demonstrates the work we're doing, that councils approve this work and we're acting on council's recommendation. So ideally we have this plan as an update that supports staff's work.
Counselor?
Thank you. I'll leave it for other counselors to chime in on that. I do feel we do have some staff and perhaps that's the kind of support that we could still see some results from before rushing into this right away. The last thing I wanted to ask you was about the accommodation plan in relation to the town square. I did notice, not town square, town hall, and I did notice that had come through the motion for allocation to make sure that we had highest and best use. But I noticed it didn't include the JOC. I was specific on requesting administrative offices, which was not necessarily conducive to just town hall, but rather assessing all the administrative offices within town. Is that something that you could provide some context and clarity on your intentions?
Through
you, Mr. Mayor, certainly by the fact we've touched on the administration of and spaces at JOC on second page of that plan, page 18-10, we do highlight that in 2019, we did improve the renovations of JOC, so we could shift some staff to that space. We certainly will include the JOC in our review.
Counselor?
Great, thank you.
Counselor Reese?
Yeah, thank you. And I guess I'll just start by following up with Councillor Gilliland's discussion. If we're going to be doing a review of the sport plan, have you had questions or discussions through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. McDougall about what the needs are? Have sport organizations said we need to look at this or something else? Or is this just something you think is due at this time because sport may have changed over the last 7 or 8 years? Have there been, through you to Ms. McDougall, have we heard from our sport organizations saying we need something?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, directly they are interested in the support that we might be able to provide them towards initiatives like Safe Sport and like DEI, women in sport, gender equity. These are all highlighted on that summary of that sport plan and what objectives that we're looking for this plan to help hone in on, specifically where as it relates to sport. Those are topics that are in society right now, and we're looking to make sure we have the proper lens to it as it relates to sport. As far as organizations seeking this, I think in a general sense, all sports are looking for guidance and support with these topics.
Counselor?
Thank you. On that note, I think from a weight standpoint, I think it'd be a good idea to have a weight on the sport tourism program to see what the sport plan results show, that this is or is not something that's valuable. And do we have a job description for that person yet? What their role would be? Is it primarily administrative? Is it trying to get more sport tourism, a better coordination? What is that half a person at 68,000? What are they doing? Or is that job description coming sometime soon?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, staff have prepared a draft scope of work for this position, and I can briefly summarize it here for you now, if you'd like. They certainly would work in collaboration with local sports organizations and sport community and our existing sport community development specialist. Their areas of interest would include securing event hosting rights that come with the broad range of tourism related to benefits to the town of Aurora, building strong relationship with stakeholders, 3 levels of sport federations, government administrators, local champions, venue partners in the Chamber of Commerce, support the delivery of their local events through communication initiatives, the visitor experience and integration of cultural and societal or social activities, and then help organizations with the logistics of their sporting events, where their primary function should be to operate the event. We want to help them from that angle as it relates to the tourism component. This role will be critical in the success of increasing capacity and competitiveness of Aurora to host sport events. They would be responsible for strategically identifying new events to bring into the community that will create economic growth, provide opportunities to develop a local sports system, and leave a legacy of skill development, increased physical activity, and cultural celebration. Just simply with this, an example of what's capable and possible is the IIHF event that we hosted and we brought to Aurora. We also brought recently the college baseball championships. Those are the types of events we're talking about, something that they're not necessarily local tournaments, although we're happy to help the local sports organizations with their tournaments. We're thinking broader than that. And then how that can help with economic development, tourism of Aurora, spinning that as relates to bringing unique opportunities to Aurora.
Counselor?
Okay, look forward to seeing that. I see a number of new positions primarily, and you make this comment that the town square continues to be a priority, and it certainly is. And you've got the total net operating requirements are $1,070,000. On the previous page, you say that 267,300 is going to be phased in over 3 years for tax stabilization. So is that part of the 1,070,000? Some of that's coming, that 267 is coming from tax stabilization phased in over 3 years through you to Ms. McDougall?
Ms. McDougall?
Just going to find my page. So I can
Sorry,
read.
it's page 88 and the tax stabilization comment is on the previous page 87.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Through you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the town square and the pressures that are seen there, we definitely are. Sorry, I'm going back onto my slide because I know it's on here. I specifically made note of this to refer to. One more slide, sorry. So with the first line being the 352 or the 350 that staff asked for, that is tallies together with the original 720 for that 1,070, 1,040, sorry. And with a net impact, as you see that line progressively shows brackets beside it. So that line and that 352 over time reduces due to the improvement or increased revenues we're anticipating. So the pressure is 267. The funding and cost recovery of the 267 is spread out over the 3 years, netting out zero by utilizing the tax reserve to phase in that pressure over the 3 years.
Okay.
Counselor?
Thank you. And the debt that will be assumed in 2024, I read somewhere where that's going to be turned into a debenture. There'll be some tax or some debt service there. Now, can you, through you, Mayor, to probably Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, could you identify what the amount of debt service there is on the debt that we are accumulating with the town square?
Ms. Mary Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So for the debt servicing costs, there are two different funding sources for that because there's a portion of it which is DC funded, which is related to the outdoor square area. And then there's the tax levy funded portion, which relates to the cultural portions of the construction. The portion that is tax funded, we have the 510,000 that's in our budget, which is levied over a 2-year period during the last term of council. And that will be reserved for the debt financing cost. And the plan is to try and marry up that amount with the amount of repayments that we'd make and adjust the amortization period accordingly so that we can pay off those amounts on an annual basis.
Counselor.
So my question is, how much of it goes to the taxpayer is really what my question is. So when you take about this pocket, you're going to have some of it by DCs. How much of this is liable to go to the taxpayer, even if it's on a matter of 3, 4, 5 years down the road? Can you help me with that through you, Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Mary Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it'll be, the repayment amount will be 510, which was tax levy. And right now we are looking at about 7.5 million plus interest costs that will be turned into a debenture, right? So will depend on the amortization period, will depend on the interest rate and the amount that we plan to repay, which would be the 510.
Counselor.
Okay, thank you. The other question I guess I have with this has to do with the number of new positions that we have, and I realize we need new positions because this is a big job. My question then through you to Ms. McDougall is, are any of these positions that you have identified here revenue generating positions, marketing, promotion, advertising? Are they putting people in the seats is what I'm saying in terms of revenue, because I see some of the revenue numbers are pretty conservative. And my suggestion is that when you have a 3-year cash flow and you see a deficit year after year, I think we'd like to see that deficit declining. So my second question then after that is, do we see, or what do we see this town square becoming from a deficit standpoint? Is it ever going to be sustainable? Is our target to be sustainable? Because I haven't seen the 5 or 7 year cash flow on this. So that's it's a long question. I'll ask them again if you can answer them one at a time. Thanks.
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I think your question was the positions that are posted. So the 5 positions that are in this budget request, 4 facilities and a customer service. Are there direct revenues related to the hires of those positions? In a roundabout way, not direct. I need facility staff in our buildings to open the door. Same with customer service staff. If I don't have those, then I'd be turning away revenues because I can't open the doors to deliver services. So they're not directly related to revenue offsets. However, without them, I won't have the capability of collecting the revenues and renting the facilities. As it relates to a longer term business outlook, obviously that would be an ideal scenario for us. We are conservative in our approach. We've told council that we don't want it to be so high prediction that it's not necessarily, or when it isn't achieved, it's a failure. We want to be conservative and definitely every year being evaluated so that we can adjust our next outlook. So this year we are showing you 24, 25, and 26. In a year's time, we'll be showing you 25, 26, 27, and maybe beyond that again. The outlook will definitely be more predictive once we open the doors and have an idea of the uptake that we're going to see. We have an idea in comparison to other cultural centers, but right now until Aurora's opens, we don't have a consistency to be able to tell you that until we have that at least lived experience.
Counselor.
Just a moment. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 6.1.4 Corporate Services, Binder tab 9. Mr. Serio. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm pleased to present to you the proposed budget for the Corporate Services Department. I'm in charge of this. As you can see on page 9.6 of the budget binder, each division in corporate services has accomplished a lot over this past year. Most notably, from an accessibility perspective, the PMO/Business Transformation Division facilitated a partnership with Access Now to conduct accessibility assessments on 7 of our town facilities. And they facilitated a partnership with Treat Accessibly to support accessible trick-or-treating on Halloween. Bylaw Services successfully implemented the AMPS, and Legal Services transitioned to a new insurance program, both of which generated savings for the town. Legislative Services modernized and standardized corporate policies and put in place a program to maintain all policies, which involved collaboration amongst all the managers across the corporation. In addition, as a result of the new term of council, the beginning of this year was focused on reviewing, updating, and filling many positions to the town's committees and local boards, and administering a new comprehensive orientation program. Lastly, the HR division developed a learning and organizational development strategy, which includes leadership competencies, and digitized both the recruitment and onboarding processes, making it more efficient for the town to attract and retain excellent talent. Some of corporate services' key objectives in 2024 are really continuation of the accomplishments on the previous slide. So last year, you're aware that the town received gold certification by Excellence Canada. This coming year, we are planning for platinum. In addition, we will focus on refining the role of the project management office. And then the remaining 4 objectives on the slides are well underway, and the plan for the next 4 years is to continue with the implementation of the AMPS, the Policy Management Program, and the corporate plans, and to strengthen the partnership that we have with Animal Services, all with the help of additional resources that are being requested to better service the organization in the community. This slide shows an overview of the proposed multi-year budgets for the divisions in corporate services. The department currently has 36 full-time staff, and we are requesting 5 new positions, with 1 being a conversion over the next 3 years that will be discussed further in a following slide. The department's changes to the base of the budget are shown in this table. As Robin had mentioned, a lot of these increases are mainly related to inflationary pressure. You will note that there is only a slight increase to the insurance and legal advocacy services in 2025 and 2026 as compared to 2024. And this is as a result of the insurance market moving away from being in a hard market, and a push by our insurance company for the town to increase its deductible, which will result in more claims being handled in-house. And lastly, there is a savings of $36,000 as a result of the renegotiation of one of our HR contracts. In terms of our positions that we are requesting, the first position being requested is in 2024, and it is the conversion of a contract full-time animal services officer position to a permanent full-time one. As the population growth continues to occur and more residents purchase pets, Animal Services is increasing an increase in animal control concerns. The division is also experiencing sustained year-over-year increases in service requests to deal with sick and injured wildlife. The conversion will assist Bylaw Services in retaining staff and ensuring that animal service levels are not impacted. The salary for this position is contained within the division's existing budget and also forms part of a shared service agreement with the town of Georgina. And additional costs will be offset by increased revenues from pet licensing, AMPS, and enforcement initiatives. The next position being requested in 2024 is a policy coordinator position. As a result of a partnership with York University, the town has made changes to its existing policy program by introducing a policy on how to manage policies and creating accessible templates for policies and procedures. In order to sustain this program, a dedicated resource is required that would be responsible for maintaining regulatory compliance and assisting with business continuity as a result of staff turnover. Currently, the town has 250 policies and hundreds of undocumented standard operating procedures, with new policies and procedures being introduced on a regular basis, either as a result of good governance or legislative changes. And maintaining the town's policy program will result in guidance, consistency, accountability, efficiency, and clarity on the town's operations. And the risk of not having one dedicated resource to do this includes continuing to have outdated policies and procedures, inconsistencies in the organization, wasted time and resources, loss of knowledge due to turnover, and a lack of accountability and regulatory compliance and liability. And this position is funded for 2 years by the Safe Restart grant funding. So this is one of those positions. Bylaw Services is requesting 2 officers, one in 2025 and one in 2026. The trend is that bylaw complaints continue to rise. The property standards bylaw has been recently modernized. Bylaw Services intends to modernize further bylaws like the town's licensing bylaws and to deal with vehicle for hire and short-term rentals. So it is expected that there will be additional service pressures to address bylaw related issues. In comparison to the N6 municipalities, the Bylaw Services Division has less bylaw officers per capita, and the salary for the additional 2 officers will be offset by increased revenues from modernizing the licensing standards, increased parking enforcement coverage, AMPS, and an overall reduction in divisional overtime. The last position being requested is in 2026 in the PMO Business Transformation Division. It requires a coordinator to assist with maintaining project documentation, running reports, tracking tasks, and communicating with project stakeholders. This position will also support asset management, the emergency management plan, and the business continuity management plan. When compared to other municipalities that have a project management office, the town's PMO office has more objectives and portfolios, but with only half of the staff. If this position is approved, it will take over the more administrative tasks, which will allow the manager of PMO and the consultant to focus on providing project management support, strategic planning, and innovative initiatives to the organization. Corporate Services is requesting funding for only 1 capital project in 2024 under Growth and New in the amount of $85,000 to complete accessibility assessments on the remaining 7 town facilities and 14 of our trails. This project is being proposed to fulfill some of the goals set out in the town's multi-year accessibility plan, specifically those dealing with the design of public spaces. The town has done 8 facilities, and we are now looking to do the remaining 7. The project will include pre-planning, mapping, data analysis, and summary reports. There will be a community engagement piece, a verification stamp whereby residents and visitors may log onto an app to see which town facilities and trails are accessible so that they can plan their visit accordingly. This project not only reflects the town's commitment to building an inclusive and accessible community, but it also just demonstrates the town's innovative approach to service delivery. That is the end of my presentation, and I would do my best to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councilor, a motion to receive. Councilor Kim, Councilor Thompson, Councilor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Serio, with the positions that are being reflected here, I just want to confirm, is starting at July 1 again?
Sarah,
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, they are. They all are.
Councilor.
Thank you. And as well as the future ones, because I believe you're staggering your staff, are you?
Sarah,
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we're staggering the staff, and they are all commencing at the mid-year.
Councilor.
Thank you. And so just to be clear, moving an existing position from a contracted time to permanent full-time, that increase request is $11,000.
Sarah.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it is on the business case. Shows 11.
Thank you. I have a comment that I do like the charts and graphs that you guys did provide in your business case. I did think it was very useful to see those comparators with other municipalities. And it does show that you do have a lot of pressure in your department. And I know that we are a growing community, and one of the number one things is property standards and bylaw and your services. So it does really give an inside look as to what your department needs. And certainly don't need a third party to tell me what these charts say. So that's great. In 2025 and 2026, You're phasing in your bylaw enforcement for one position each of those years as the projection of growth occurs. Could you just confirm that?
Mr. Serio,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we will be.
Counselor,
Thank you. So that would reflect 57,200 in 2025, which is 50% of that salary, and the following would be 124, which would reflect the COLA the first year, and then plus the new staff hire, correct?
Mr. Serio,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
That's great.
Counselor,
Through Mr. Chair to Mr. Sarah, I'm not so certain that this is your department or Ms. Weimer Van Kessel, but the Wi-Fi program, is that under you? Nope. Okay. Then I shall leave that alone. Thank you.
Counselor Kim,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, congratulations, Ms. Tesario, for your first budget. Looks great. Just have one quick question. I noticed that the tax funded portion increases over time since 21-22 from 85% to as high as 89 and comes back to 88. Is it some grants like Safe Start or something dropping off, or what would be the cause of that trend?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there is the Safe Restart funding in this budget for the policy position, and that's covering the first 2 years. So that drops off in the third year, which would reduce the non-tax revenues.
Counselor,
Great. Thank you.
Counselor Weiss.
Yeah, thank you. My question has to do with the key capital project, the accessibility assessment. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to whoever should be talking about the scope of this, because we have, I think I heard trails, but I was looking somewhere else. But is it trails, parks, playgrounds, everything having to do with recreation, or is it just focused on trails?
Sarah,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this time, this project, the capital project that we are requesting, will only be the remaining 7 town facilities and the trails. So not the parkland. We're hoping that if this project continues to be successful, that we come back in future years and assess the parks. And I think that's it. Just the parks. The parks are the last thing that we need to do.
Counselor,
Okay, I just think it's time to have a full assessment of all of our town facilities, particularly our parks and playgrounds, because they just keep coming up time and time again. So if that's a possibility, I'd like to see that happen as well. Thanks. That's it. The accessibility issues, because we do have a couple of playgrounds that are coming forward. One of them is going to be accessible, and I wonder if it's a pressing need that you see as well.
Christine
So
Camp.
certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, accessibility certainly is an issue within parks. We do meet accessibility standards currently within our playgrounds that we already have established. That being said, there's a growing demand for complete barrier-free accessibility. And we have recognized that, and we are working towards putting in additional barrier-free playgrounds, one in each quadrant in town as per the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. That being said, accessibility also within our trails is a significant challenge in some of our trails just due to the topography of them. But moving forward, we're doing everything that we can to ensure that accessibility is there, and certainly it can be enhanced.
Counselor,
Thank you. That's it.
any other comments, or questions? Counselor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. I just want to ask a couple questions more about what Councillor Rees was talking about, because I recall we received some feedback from Mr. Perry and one of the residents that's actively engaged on the accessibility committee. And it was under our understanding that the master plan was, I guess it was kind of, I got the feeling that we were going to be addressing this a lot sooner than later. And it sounds like we don't have a timeline. So I don't know who to direct that to. Was it Mr. Serio? Back in May, it seemed to be that The answer is like, we're looking into it. It's something that's on our docket and we have a lot of goals and we're going to be starting this later this year with the committee. However, some of the residents are very frustrated and feel like it's been put on the back burner and constantly pushed back, especially when in respect to parks. So I don't see a timeline here. I understand when that's going to be. And I'm pretty sure these residents are not going to be happy about not understanding what that timeline is. If you could maybe give me some clarity on that.
Mr. Serio?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So initially, when we were looking at preparing the capital project, we did have all of the town assets in, being the facilities, the parks, and the trails. The cost to complete that was going to be over $275,000. So because the town has 69 parks, the cost of assessing the parks alone was approximately $150,000. So given all the other capital requests and inflationary pressures, we thought that it's best to divide the project and to just work on the remaining facilities, since we had already started with the first 8, and the trails, since the trails appear to have been the next best option. So our hope is that if this project does continue to stay successful, that we would come back for a request to do the parks at a later date, hopefully in 2025, 2026.
Counselor?
Thank you. And from what I understand, Mr. Perry had suggested that your department was, or at least had a goal in mind, to do open houses to engage with the community about what types of things can be improved within the parks. Is that something you have started this year at all? Have you at least started that engagement, that public engagement piece?
Mr. Serio?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out. I'm not sure if it has started. I know that he does speak about community engagement and doing some engagement through the Place Speak, or the platform that we have. But I'm not sure if he's done any open houses yet.
Counselor?
Thank you. So within our budget, is this something that we could do currently within our staff, at least to begin these quarterly open houses now and start collecting the data in preparation for this park assessment?
Mr. Serio?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly look into it.
Thank you.
Sir? Any other comments, questions? All the vote, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 6.1.5 Finance, binder tab 10, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Okay, thank you. I'm up here now to present the finance budget for you. So our proposed budget includes a number of initiatives, but we'll get started with some of the accomplishments that we achieved this year. So as presented at the last meeting, we did receive the 2023 budget award for the from GFOA for the distinguished budget presentation. We have also implemented our new financial system, and the work on that still does continue as we look to improve it as we go forward. We joined the One Joint Investment Board for our prudent investors to invest our long-term money and hopefully gain much greater returns. We also have had staff that presented at conferences this year. So we had a few IT staff present on our telephony project at the MISA conference. And we also had one of our finance managers present at the CAGFO conference relating to our new financial system and the property tax and water billing solution. We've also worked across the organization with other departments to implement new initiatives to expand the use of our City View portal and to also assist bylaw in the new AMPS system. In 2024 and going forward, our objectives include asset management and financial reporting. So there's much work to be done here, as there's more work that will come on asset management as we complete the plan and we operationalize it going forward. And there's also new legislative requirements for how we report on our tangible capital assets. We are also looking to expand the capabilities for a new financial system. Now that we've got this tool that we can use, let's start leveraging it to do more better reporting, and help us manage our budgets going forward much better. We're also looking at the continued implementation of the recommendations that are included in the corporate technology strategic plan. And we are also continuing to work on our fiscal strategy action plan. This next slide shows you the distribution of the budget across the finance department divisions. As you can see, the largest division being information technology services. Also, over the next 3 years, we are looking to add 2 new positions, one in 2024 and one in 2025, and I'll get into those a little bit. So our proposed budget changes, so these are our base changes, which are typically inflationary in nature. So we do have salaries and benefits being one of the most significant impacts in our budget. We do have the removal of some of the safe recovery grant funds that we have been using for some of the work that has been happening in IT as we advance some projects during the pandemic. We have the removal of capital recovery for staff that were dedicated to the financial system project, and then other regular increases that we see that are inflationary in nature relating to software licenses, maintenance and support, and also telecommunications. We are also adjusting some of our revenues in the tax and water area, and those are in alignment with the fees and charges report that came to you earlier this year. In capital operating costs, we do have the phase in of the new financial systems. So that is phased in over multiple years. There is also an offset to some of those costs in the corporate accounts budget, which includes the recovery from water, wastewater, and stormwater rates. And we also have the rollout of the additional modules relating to the human resources system. So this is the onboarding and learning management tools that are expected to roll out shortly. Enhancements and transformation includes 2 new positions that we are looking at. The first one is to support asset management, tangible capital asset reporting, and also reporting internally with leveraging our new system. So this person will help us meet some of the requirements that are now coming forward under Public Sector Accounting Board standards that are new for tangible capital asset reporting. So there's new obligations in how we report those on our financial statements. And they're also going to provide a lot of support to the program manager proposed for engineering that will lead the asset management initiatives across the organization. In addition to that, we are looking for someone with strong technical capabilities so they can help us with our system maintenance and also in the development of reports for the system. Because if we contract out the development of reports, they can be quite costly depending on the complexity of the report that we're looking to create. We also are looking to increase our capacity to apply for grants. So right now, grant applications is only part of somebody's work. Unfortunately, there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of grants out there that we just don't have the capacity to go and pursue at this time. With this position, we can actually have someone who's dedicated and focused on writing strong grant applications and applying for more grants. And that position is proposed to start in 2025. And the expectation is it will help us generate more revenue to support both operating and capital initiatives. Our capital budget, we are looking to increase looking for capital budget change of $608,000 and looking to spend just about $4.3 million in 2024. So I could say these are key capital projects, but we actually have 6 that we're requiring additional funds for. So these are all of them. It's all 6. So just to give you an overview, we do have some funds in here for the replacement of our customer relationship management system. So we're still in the early stages of this project. I expect that once we get further along, we will be coming back to council once we firm up the direction that we're heading with that. We are also looking to add internet redundancy, so we don't have any more of those Rogers days that we had in the past. Network access control. This is to actually replace our proxy. So our proxy is getting towards the end of life, and we do need to have something in place. And this is something that's a bit more robust than what we're currently using today. And IT emergency repairs, that's exactly as it sounds. If there's an emergency happens, we use this project. If not, at the end of the year, the money stays in the reserve. The address manager application sounds a little interesting as to what it is. What it is actually, it's related to the GIS system. So there's a new next generation 911 system that will be coming out in 2025, and this project will enable us to be ready for that. And the last project, which is the one Councillor Gillen was asking about, is the outdoor Wi-Fi implementation. So this will look to put Wi-Fi available in our public spaces. And before proceeding with this, we are looking to partner with another organization to help fund and support this project. And that is the end of the presentation. I look forward to your questions.
You. Council, a motion to receive. Council Gardner. Council Thompson, thank you. Before I move to questions, I'm just going to pass the chair to Council Thompson.
You're first.
Thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Weimer Van Kessel. I understand the financial reporting, so you're undertaking a brand new system and you require some of the assistance. I just had a question about the grant policy advisor. And I was just curious as to whether or not you can give me or the public rather some idea of what the KPI of that position would be. I know that position will cost taxpayers about $130,000 a year on an annual salary. What kind of expectation will we receive for grant writing?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So for grant writing, we're expecting that this position would generate more revenue than what it actually costs. The challenge is not all the revenue goes directly to actually paying for this individual position. It goes towards the different programs that the grant writer applies for. So by having more grant applications out there, we should be able to bring in more revenues to do various different types of capital projects, to also implement some operating programs. So what our assumption in here in this project is that we've pulled some of it from reserves because we're assuming some of it's going to help support a number of those capital projects that we're going to be able to do and generate those grant funds for.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do you have any idea of an estimated revenue of grants that we pull from various different departments to give us an idea of what that looks like?
Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we do have some graphics in the business case that identifies the grant opportunities that are out there versus what we were approved for in grant funding. So you can see on page 10-16, we've identified potential grant opportunities versus revenues we've seen. The 2021 was a little bit higher than what we normally do see. That could have been partially because we did receive a lot more in Canada Solar jobs during that period of time than a lot of others did, because we were able to actually hire students during that period of time.
Mr. Gillen.
Thank you. So what the graph is suggesting then, based on say 2023, the approved funding was maybe around 3 million. And the projection, if we were to have an additional hire, could be, you could just clarify.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's hard to estimate exactly how much we would be able to generate, but considering there are grants out there we just don't have capacity to apply for right now, we would actually succeed in those. I would expect that we'd definitely be able to make a significant increase on this amount, which would definitely cost more or generate more revenue and more program opportunities than the cost of this position.
Councillor.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you. As far as the outlook for our service plan looking forward in 2026, do we have to make some service level adjustments if we wanted to stay on task with our current levy plan that you have?
Ms. Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, are you speaking about the overall levy for the organization?
Yeah.
So the 3-year budget is a complete budget. We could go ahead with that for the next 3 years. What we do is on an annual basis, we are required under the Municipal Act to reaffirm the budget. So we will be coming back next year to take a look at the changes to this budget. So things do happen. Some things get adjusted and some things do change. And at that point in time, it'll be similar to the budget you saw last term, where we talk more about what changed from this budget to next one. And we'll be focusing in on those changes for 25 and 26.
Councillor.
Thank you. That's all the answer I was looking for with that. I just wanted to kind of clarify based on the highlighted savings, this budget was the 75,000 in Phragmites, 40,000 in HVAC in-house by bringing a position in-house, and $6,000 moving from online to online guide versus printing. And those are our top three efficiencies that we have found in this budget for 2024. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So those are changes that we identified that are clear ones that needed to become before councils because they are identified specifically in here. There are other things in here such as additional revenues. So when we generate additional revenues, that does also offset the tax levy. So for example, the 250,000 associated with the sport dome, the additional revenues for tax and water billing areas. So there's other things in here as well, in addition to those.
Counselor.
Thank you. Moving to the Wi-Fi plan. I understand you have a line item here for the cost. And I'm just curious as to what the annual operating cost of providing the service. This seems to me this is the implementation, but doesn't give us an idea what this is going to cost us on an annual basis.
Mr. Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have that information. I will have to get back to you. It was nowhere near as much as what the overall cost is for the implementation. Off the top of my head, I think it was in around the 15 to 20,000 per year.
Counselor.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. And one of the things that I had forgotten to mention when we had our conversation before. There are many other things I probably want to bring up, but I will leave that for another day. I will pass the baton to Councillor Gartner, I believe, is waiting in the queue.
Mr. Gartner.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Following on the grant position, would that be a contract position so that we could make sure that we had the right person for that job?
Mr. Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this would be a permanent new position. Permanent positions do attract better talent. So we are able to have a better selection as to who the candidates are to bring in for this opportunity.
So what happens if the person underperforms?
Ms. Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So when we have a new person join the team, they are under a 6-month probationary time frame. And if the person's not performing to the level that's expected, that becomes more of a performance management issue.
Counselor.
I'm just thinking it takes 6 months just to get a grant in. Okay, thank you. So what we were talking about earlier in the day, we have budget authority from a previous year, and we haven't put in any inflationary cost into that. Why is that?
Ms. Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So when we have budget authority that was already previously approved, many of those projects already have established contracts, and the contracts actually dictate what the inflationary impact is in them, or they have set contract pricing. For things that are further out in the capital budget, they will get adjusted as we go forward, and we do look to include inflationary impacts in our 10-year plan. So there are some assumptions in there.
Counselor.
Give me a much longer answer on the phone. Well, let's take the example of a truck, because we know that the automotive sector has really been hit hard by inflation.
Ms. Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So for example, with vehicles, the market is very unpredictable at this time, as we are all aware, but fleet for an asset management perspective is part of a program for capital. So that gives us the opportunity that if one truck costs more, but maybe we have savings on a different vehicle, we are able to balance within that program so that we can offset that. If there's a situation where the cost is beyond what you're able to offset with savings on other vehicles within that program, then it would be a report back to council.
Counselor.
And council would be expected to find the money from where?
Ms. Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If it did come back to council, the report would include the recommendations as to which reserves it would come from. So if it was a fleet replacement, it would be the fleet R&R reserve, but it could be anything depending on what that type of project is. The finance staff would identify in the financial implications of the report which reserves it would come from and what the overall impact on the reserves is at that time.
Counselor?
Thank you. The last question for now, and this is the one that I have the most trouble with. It's page 16, it's 16 sections, page 17, and it's about the Henderson pedestrian crossing with the pedestrian activated button. So this is in my ward. It was finished in July, and yet we still have the $365,000 presented to us. So could you try and explain that to me again?
Mr. Mayor Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. My apology.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this project is an example of a project that was approved in previous years, and the work is basically substantially complete. This project in particular is in the warranty period, which is why it has not yet been closed. So once that warranty period ends, the project will get closed, but at this point in time, it's just being held open until that work, that period of time is complete, but we're not necessarily expecting any more expenditures. So if we look in the 10-year plan for the expenditures on that project, you'll see all the spending was included in 23 or previous years, and there's no planned expenditures for next year in 2024.
Counselor?
Yes, I understand that, but the total amount is still here and still presented as part of the budget. As the expenditures have been done, why wouldn't we just have the contingency amount?
Mr. Mayor Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we do take some assumptions in for these warranty period projects when we're doing our reserve analysis. We understand that if there's any excess funds which has not been spent, that there is a significant opportunity that these will return to reserve. But our best practice is that we wait for these periods to complete, because there are things that do come up during this time. And then we need the project open so we can actually make these payments.
Counselor?
So if any of my residents want to question me about this, I shall send them to you. Thank you.
You. Counselor Weiss?
Thank you. And this through you to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. We've been speaking a lot about the use of our tax stabilization, and you and I had a conversation about the number, and you showed me where the budget is, or sorry, what the reserve is now at 6.2 million. Have you done any, and you also suggested, or I read somewhere, that the best practices is somewhere around 5.5 million. So have you run the numbers on what the effect of this budget is on the tax stabilization, since we're taking money out of tax stabilization? Where are we headed using the tax stabilization fund?
Mr. Mayor Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So tax stabilization, we have a target value, that reserve, of roughly 10% of the tax levy, which is roughly around 5.5 million. We do have excess funds in that right now, and some of that is for some of these planned phase-in. So for example, the financial system phase-in includes some draws from tax stabilization. We've got those amounts in and over above what the amount is in there for our target amount. We've got the surpluses that had been earned on Aurora Town Square over the last few years until it becomes operational. We've been taking those surpluses and including them in tax stabilization so that we can phase in the costs, as we're seeing, like as the time it takes for that project to ramp up as it goes into operations. It takes a little while before those revenues get established, and the initial cost in the first year is more than it is in 2026. So we're using those funds to help mitigate that. So some of these things are actually planned because we've known about them, and we've actually increased the overall amount. What happens with our tax stabilization is the way it gets funded is it gets funded through the operating budget surpluses. So as we achieve a surplus at the end of the year, we top up that to the target plus any known amount. So if there's anything in this budget that's a known amount, what we will do is we'll ensure that's there in addition to the 10%. Before then allocating the rest of any surplus to reserves. And there's going to be a report coming shortly to General Committee that talks about the surplus and deficit management and how that all works and the bylaw associated with that.
Counselor?
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. 6.16. Operational Services, binder tab 11. Presentation, Ms. Tinkamp.
Good evening. This evening, I have the opportunity to present the 2024-26 operational budget for operational services, and this includes capital as well. So to highlight some of the accomplishments from 2023, you'll be able to see the extensive list between 11.5 and 11.6, but a few of the ones that come to mind that we've completed to date is the urban forestry study update. That's just recently been completed, and we'll be reporting back to council in Q1 of 2024 with the update on it. So that'll be the health of our urban forest within the town of Aurora. We also have started the construction on the non-program park on Hartwell Way. It's been a long undertaking to get to this present time. And as part of that construction, we'll be completing a community garden, as well as a total natural park, inclusive of a playground, some reflective space, and an indigenous area. So that will be completed in June of 2024. We've also done some multi-use path asphalting repairs on Bayview Avenue. It's increased the safety of pedestrians in this important transportation corridor. And we've completed 66 meters of stormwater sewer structural lining on Yonge Street. So that will potentially extend some of this infrastructure for 75 to 100 years. And Fleet Services also completed the procurement of 9 vehicles and equipment units to support our operational services frontline staff in the service delivery and maintaining our services within the town. There we go. And we also have some key objectives for 2024. The implementation of the asset management plan. We're going to build and expand in operational services on the work that has been completed by the town and the consultant on our asset management plan. And by doing so, it'll be ensuring that we have a comprehensive inventory for all our assets within parks, fleet, and other operational services divisions. It also includes some reclassification of some of the classes of the equipment and the assets. And it also is creating a formal condition assessment program for our division and areas. In addition, we're having some service discussions and recommendations related to waste, the anticipated transition of recycling to the provincial authority at the end of 2025. So we'll be bringing forward a comprehensive report to council with some important decisions on the future service delivery of this program. And the next initiative that is important is after we've had a successful pilot project of the dog waste program, we will be looking to expand this within Parks and Trails, and it'll be a phased-in approach over the next few years. We also have ongoing CCTV inspections of all our sanitary and stormwater infrastructure. This is just ongoing maintenance so we can see the condition of the pipes and our underground infrastructure. And the last final thing that's very important to operational services is additional staff to support within our areas to continue to support the growth, the contractual obligations, and the new enhanced service level initiatives. So this is as a result of assumption of residential and industrial areas within town that roads and water both support, new parkland initiatives, and most recently the Windrow program. Am I going to? Thank you. Program by the budget by the program. So this is an overview of the operations budget. In total, we are looking for a $472,000 increase in 2024, 476 in 2025, and you'll see a savings in 2026. This is a result of the potential savings that we're going to have from the recycling moving to the province. Now, I just want to make an indication to council that we may not realize all this savings at the end of the day. It depends on the service level that is going to be delivered by us and decided upon council, and you'll be making those decisions in the next year. The next is water, wastewater, and storm related. So these are the user fees and any projects that have been taken on by water, wastewater regarding storm. So this would include our CCTV program and improvements to stormwater management facilities. And then we have 4 FTEs that we're asking for between 24 and 26 within operations. And as part of this, there's COLA increases and salary and benefits, step increases as well within operations to support the business. We also have the savings that I've just mentioned that is a result of the moving to the provincial legislated waste or recycling collection. And as everybody knows in the public and ourselves, fuel continues to increase and it's not very stable. So we're asking for the increase in the fuel costs, parts and servicing as part of fleet is very expensive these days. So those are some contractual obligations that we have, along with numerous contracts within parks, roads, and snow management. They all have contractual obligations that we need to be cognizant of, and also the inflationary pressures that are within all those contracts and divisions. We also have increased revenue for ball diamonds, soccer fields, and the turfs. So this takes into account the new turfs that will be coming online in the coming years. And there's also some LED savings. This is from the conversion of the LED lights on the street lamps. So from my understanding, it was 2 payments required in each year. And as a result of 2026, there is only 1 payment required in 26. So there's a savings there that was allocated for and accounted for previously. And then the proposed budget changes. We have some capital operating costs associated to the dog waste receptacles. It's 10,000 showing in 2024 because by the time we get the units secured, if approved through budget and installed, it'll be coming online approximately in June. So there's 6 months of collection services there. And then it's for the additional receptacles required in 25 and 26. The maintaining service levels for growth, we have projected in 2024 a full-time FTE for a flex operator position. This functions between roads and parks on a 6-month capacity in each area. And we also have one in 2026. In 2025, we have a seasonal laborer part-time projected and 2 students in 2026. And this is to deal with growth primarily, new parks coming online and the maintenance required. We also have some user fee and soccer field revenue that will be coming in as part of community services. They're looking at the user fees. So there is some increases projected, and this is our projections out in 2025 and 26 of what those may be. And we also have a full-time water operator in 2025. So that's totally funded off our user rates, wind water, wastewater. And there's a full-time supervisor between parks and roads. So similar to the flex, we'll operate 6 months and 6 months approximately in each division to support those current supervisors and take on some of the burden that they've taken over the years with the increased growth and the number of new initiatives and programs that we have running in our parks. This position, those current supervisors that are in these areas, they do a significant amount of overtime, and there is some savings that will be realized as a result of those this new position. And that wraps up the operating. As for the capital, the proposed budget change for 2024 is 8,400,000 approximately, and 986,000 as a result of fleet and the new assets. Oh, sorry. And just to highlight some of the capital projects within our operations. So we have a playground, picnic shelter and court replacement project plan for Fleury Park. playground is due for replacement in 2025. And with the recent pickleball interest from the public, we've going to look at redesign of the complete park. As many of you know, the playground sits in the rear of the park, not very good for accessibility for sight lines. So we have a plan to move it forward and put it up where the washroom is, and include some pickleball courts as part of that. We have structural and sanitary lines and lateral replacement or relining. We also have a playground replacement with a fully barrier-free accessible one at Town Park. We have town parking lot maintenance, which is a result of the engineering study on all our parking lots. So there's some mitigation of things that we need to do in those curbs, crack sealing, etc. We have the artificial turf for the Aurora Barbarians, which we successfully have an agreement with OHT on. So we would like to be moving forward with that. And we have some multi-course improvements as per the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which have been allocated or accounted for in the previous Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And we're bringing it forward just to address some of those pickleball concerns this year. And that concludes.
Thank you. We get a motion to receive. Councillor Weiss, Councillor Gardner, Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair to Ms. Teenkamp. Thank you for showing the savings for that position in the Parks Department. It's good to see that there is some cost being offset by the overtime. So I do really appreciate that. I do recollect that within your presentation, that with some of these positions that also included part of the window clearing responsibility. Is that correct?
Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, none of these positions are included within the Windrow program.
Okay, I just thought, I thought you
Counselor?
mentioned that in your presentation. I guess not. I had some conversations with you earlier, and I was looking at the flex operator position for 2024 and 2026. And, you know, given the fact that our growth, although we are growing, and there's a lot of uncertainty right now with getting shovels in the ground and interest rates and so forth, we're seeing a lot of projects being stalled or put on hold. And so would it be something that your department would be able to consider if we approved, say, the first position in 2024 and then come back with this next budget in 2025 to have a reassessment as to how soon you would need that secondary position for that flex operator that you've proposed in 2026? Would that be something that would be that your department would consider?
Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly we have looked at the amount of land and assets that are coming on. And as such, we have forecasted and are pretty confident in the 2026 need. But we could certainly come back to council in 2025 with the additional ask at that time.
Councillor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. And just to clarify again for the public, these positions are being asked to begin as of July 1.
Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor.
So for clarity then, in 2024 for that one position, just as the sake of an example, the water operator fully funded through user rates, 56,400 in year one. And then the second year of 2025 is 50,400. Is that correct?
Steenkamp.
And that's, so in total, that'd be $100,000 or about $101,000 for the annual salary. Is that an example of how that is being shown in the budget?
Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. And that includes all the benefits associated.
Councillor.
Thank you. I just think it's important that the public understands that the way that the salaries are being shown, it's shown approving 50% of the budget being hired as of July. And because council is approving 50% of that budget, the following year, we've already technically approved that. So the second half of that budget is being shown in addition with the COLA attached to that. If I have my understanding correct?
Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you are correct.
Councillor.
Thank you. There's a lot of people in the community that are very near and dear to their hearts when it comes to dog parks. I know this has been a conversation that you and I have had quite a bit, and especially with the dog waste receptacles. And just out of curiosity, within this budget, are we to expect to see a lot more of these receptacles, especially in the Kennedy and Murray Street location? If you can confirm that, I think a lot of people will be very happy to hear that we should expect something soon.
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, there's 15 receptacles forecast for 2024, and one of those is prioritized for that area, specifically along the trail route.
Counselor?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. And I know we had a conversation about dog parks. I don't see anything reflected here, but we did have a conversation. You assured me that there were some plans in place that we are looking forward to possibly in 2025 and potentially could help service the west side. And I just wanted to at least alleviate some of the optimism to the people on that side of the community that we are working towards something.
Steenkamp?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, indeed, you're correct. We are coming back to council in Q1 of 2024 with a fulsome off-leash dog strategy for council to preview. Included with that will be some locations and some recommendations associated for placement in the budget in 25 and potentially even in outer years past that.
Counselor?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Steenkamp again. Just for clarity, I know we had conversations about Copeland Park, but as it turns out that we have it in our budget that we will be putting a temporary facility there within our current plan. I just know people are waiting with bated breath to ensure that this is happening with some decent enclosure to make it more presentable and more discreet in that area. And if you could confirm that, that would be great.
Steenkamp?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so this would be for a portable toilet within Copeland Park as per demand of the public. And while it's not in capital, it is, we can absorb the cost of that within our operating.
Counselor?
Thank you. Moving along to the pickleball courts, I know I had a conversation. I'm very happy to hear about this. And so is a lot of the members of the community who love playing pickleball. And I had a conversation about the 6 versus the 8 to 10, just knowing the footprint. And obviously, if we are going to look at whether it's doing lessons, hosting tournaments, or having a league, or having an Aurora pickleball league, servicing the community, that if we're going to do it, we should do it right. And if we can have a footprint at 8, I know you had a reason as to why you had put that. So I just would like you to be able to put some clarity and context to that, please.
Steenkamp?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, currently in the part of the redesign for Fleury Park, we have allocated a minimal of 6 pickleball courts in a complex adjacent to the tennis courts. That being said, once we work through the design, we might be able to accommodate up to 8. There's just, obviously there's some grading challenges, some surveying that needs to be required before we can fulsomely say that we can accommodate 8. But at this time, we can certainly accommodate the 6, but we may be able to include an extra couple within that area. And that'll be just part of our design review and study.
Counselor?
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. And my one last final comment, because I know this has come up, is the materials that are being considered for the artificial turf. If you could explain what kind of technologies or new technologies that are being considered. I think some people will have comfort in knowing that we are looking at the newest technology.
Steenkamp?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, artificial turf construction has come a long way, even since the time that we installed our first original artificial turf. Infill mixes traditionally were rubberized surface. Now they are moving to silica sand and more of a sand base infill material for the bedding turf. And with that comes improved play for users, decrease in maintenance. You don't get the rubberized material in your shoes and scattered about. It proves to be a much better surface for all those around.
Counselor?
That's great. Thank you very much.
Counselor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for all the people in town who experienced the work on Yonge Street and the inconvenience, did you say that this is going to extend the life of that infrastructure to 75 or 100 years?
Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. When you do some structural lining of sewer and sanitary pipes, it can potentially extend it 75 to 100 years in length.
Counselor?
And that's terrific news. You were talking about enhanced service level initiatives. Could you expand on that?
Steenkamp.
So one of the current enhanced service level initiatives is the Windrow program that council just recently endorsed. That's something that didn't occur before. And so it's an enhanced service level that we're doing the pilot project for.
Counselor.
Thank you very much. And you were talking about infrared lighting. I think you mentioned in conversation with me that you had just received back a study on putting in, LED lighting in our parks. And in particular, my interest is the Lawn Bowling Club because they've been asking for a long time. Do you have any idea how much that would cost to do the Lawn Bowling Club?
Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, as part of the 2023 budget, we did a comprehensive study with a consultant for all our sports field lighting to upgrade them to LEDs. So we just recently received it. That's why you don't see anything within the budget pertaining to it, but we will be putting those earmarked placeholders in the 10-year capital this coming season. But the one particularly, I did look it up for the Bowling Green, as I said, it's very new across my desk, but the Bowling Green, it is recommended for 2029. And I think the uplift for converting that was approximately $60,000.
Counselor.
So as some of us have had the pleasure of bowling in that area. The population that is doing that is more of an older population because they don't need to have great mobility. It's not like pickleball. In Toronto, it's just so active and so supported. I think that one of the reasons that ours is not doing that well is because it's really hard to see at night without lighting, especially for those of us who are getting older. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to perhaps Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, if I wanted to try and move, there will be no Lawn Bowling Club by the time that lighting is recommended. So is there a way to, what would be the suggested way to try and put that in the budget? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if you wanted to move that up or add it to the budget, then you would need to submit an amendment to the clerk's
Thank you.
office by the 23rd.
Thank you.
Counselor.
And through Mr. Mayor, the lighting was suggested for 2029.
Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, as per the consultant's report, but that being said, it has been in there for an extensive amount of time, and the tennis club did do their own fundraising and put in LED lighting a number of years ago. So this would bring it up to par with that.
Through Mr. Mayor, that's not going to be possible for this club. It's like they would have to have the lighting to encourage the membership, and so that's the reverse order for funding. But okay, I'll to be continued. Thank you.
Counselor Weiss.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. The first one has to do with the artificial turf. Again, you have it labeled as Aurora Barbarian, so that's a 2.75. That's a cost to us, correct? And I understand that the Aurora Barbarians they're providing $1 million. And is that in the growth and new under grants that you have there? I just want to make sure it's understood where that money is.
Steenkamp.
I'm sorry, through you, Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the 2.75 is the total cost for the field. So any offsetting that we receive from the Barbarians will be going towards that.
Yeah, I just was looking
Council.
on page, thank you, on page 1734 at growth and new to see there's $1 million placeholder in there. So I just wanted to know that if that's what it was and that's where it's going.
Steenkamp. Or Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the funding for that project includes the 1 million, which is the grant from the
Great.
Aurora Barbarians.
Okay, it's just a label
Council.
thing. Thank you. Okay. The other thing, there's a 2.5 million in that you have for studies. And in in the strategic plan connections, one of the studies is to improve transportation, mobility, and connectivity. It all seems to be focused on vehicular traffic as opposed to pedestrian and cyclist traffic. And I saw somewhere, and I was looking madly for it, that the discussion with Metrolinx and the Cousins Street underpass, or at least crossing, is not scheduled at any time. And are we going to revisit that through any of this money that we have, the 589, as a study for the east-west traverse of Metrolinx? And I say it just basically because we're working very closely now with Metrolinx in terms of construction and construction liaison. So through you, Mayor, to Mrs. Teenkamp, can you comment on that?
Mrs. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is actually an engineering project, not an operational services one.
Maybe we can wait for the next one, Planning and Development Service.
I'll wait for it. Thank you.
Okay. Is that all?
We're done. Thank you.
Councilor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Teenkamp, I know I had some conversations about your fleet strategy and, perhaps there was some pausing during the pandemic and such. However, we don't really see a forward outlook for 25, 26. We still have another few weeks of budget. So I thought, is there a critical list of must-haves that you could share with council to identify with us before the end of this budget? So at least we can at least understand if there are some things that are urgent and maybe some things that are not.
Steenkamp?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, you're referring to the 2025 and 26 outlook or the 2024?
2024.
So within the 2024 budget, everything that staff have projected and presented are pieces that we deem critical and in need of replacement. Some of those pieces are singular use. Like, for example, the Parks Department garbage truck. There's no replacement. There's no ability to rent if that piece of equipment goes down. So it's critical that we do have it replaced in a timely fashion. There's other pieces of equipment on that list that have far surpassed their life cycle. Some of them are anywhere from 3 to 5 years that we have extended them just based on the condition. And now it's come a point where they need to be replaced. All in all, I have asked my fleet supervisor and manager to have a look at the list, and we have prioritized where we could potentially defer something. But from our perspective, we would not like to defer any of them.
Councilor?
Thank you. It's just really out of curiosity, just kind of understanding. It's good to know what those options are. We don't see what the projections are for 25 and 26 because we're just looking at 2024. So naturally, I just like to be able to see if there's a way to ease the pressure in 2024, since it seems to be a lot more expense. And this year, not necessarily in your department, but overall in the entire budget seems to be a lot of pressure in 2024, especially over and above 25 and 26. So it's just nice to know we know what those options are. Sorry, I'm looking at your department in that way, but if there's a way that we can have a little bit of insight, I'd appreciate it.
Councilor Gardner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whose department would the active transportation master plan be under? Would that be under?
Mr. Ramuno. Next.
And Mr. Rumino is
He's next
not
up.
presenting tonight.
No, he is. He's next.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 6.1.7, Planning and Development Services, binder tab 12, Mr. Ramuno.
Mr. Mayor, councilors. So I'm pleased to present the Planning and Development Services budget. Which one?
No, we just I mean, unless everyone, this one and one more. So unless everyone wants to take a break, I think that we can just finish through. I'm gonna look at this side, just finish through, guys. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Ramon.
Thank you. So our accomplishments in 2023, I've listed about some of the key ones here. We've proposed adoption of our new official plan that's coming to council in December. We've launched our business outreach initiative with marketing through the emerging Aurora brand. We've also implemented the online portal for electronic submissions of all planning and building permit applications. One of the key infrastructure projects we completed just recently was the Murray Drive culvert and streambank rehab in the water main and road project. In total, we've done a pavement condition assessment of 211 kilometers of town roads, and we've actually completed 7 kilometers of road rehab work. Beginning of this year, we adopted our new community information meetings as part of our planning application consultation process in advance of our formal statutory public planning meeting in front of this council. Go on to the key objectives for 2024. As usual, Planning Development Services will continue to process our development applications, permit applications, inspections in a timely and efficient manner. As per council's direction, we'll prepare a work plan for council's consideration for the update to our zoning bylaw. As well, building on our official plan policies, we will prepare a housing action plan, encourage more attainable and affordable housing options. We'll continue to deliver our 10-year capital plan in accordance with our asset management plan. Continue to deliver and implement the actions identified in the economic development strategic action plan. We'll also be undertaking the Promenade streetscape detailed design. And embarking on the wastewater master plan in 2024. So from an overall budget perspective, I think it's so as council's aware, Planning Development Services is made up of 4 divisions: development planning, policy planning and economic development, engineering, capital delivery, and the building branch. From a operating budget perspective, as you're aware, the department has been pretty successful in being financially self-sustaining. We bring in quite a bit in revenues, development applications, and building permit application revenue. So we contribute, I think, for 2024 net budget of $522,000. Some of the proposed budget changes, again, increased revenues. Again, we're not seeing any pressures, but we are proposing 2 additional full-time staff for 2024. We've got a current full-time complement of 42, so the additional 2 will bring us up to 44. I do have our manager of engineering and capital delivery here, Nancy Fleming, who can deal with any questions that may come up with respect to the 2 additional staff. But again, the two are, one is an asset program manager to lead our asset management division. And the second staff request is a program manager within our energy and climate change responsibilities. From a capital budget standpoint, we've got a total of, we're including a total of 17 new capital projects, which will add an additional $22.5 million in total to the 24 budget. And these are just some of the key capital projects that we've identified to undertake in 2024. The majority of them are, road work, stream rehabilitation projects. And the one big one here is the water and wastewater master plan. That's it for me, Mr. Mayor. If there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ramono. We have a motion to receive. Councilor Gardner, Councilor Thompson, Councilor Gillen.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair to Mr. Ramuno. Again, just to confirm that the staff that you are proposing is to begin July 1.
Mr. Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, all the staff in Mr. Ramuno's budget are scheduled for July 1. Only the ones that are in related to Aurora Town Square start January 1st.
Counselor.
Thank you. I'd just like to reiterate with every department. So in case the public's not watching and they're specific to a certain department, they can see that highlight. So I appreciate that. And so again, it is reflected that half the salary is in 2024, the second half of the salary being in 2025 for approval for around 128,900. I had a question about the zero parking strategy plan. I understand here that there was some language here that also included the promenade, but it was on my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, if we were looking primarily in the major transit station area, not necessarily the promenade area. Could you clarify?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, that's correct. As part of the first phase of the zoning update, we would be looking at reducing the parking requirement within the promenade section of the major transit station area. So it's still part of the promenade, but we are now referring to it also as a major transit station area. In addition to that, we will be looking at pre-zoning some of those properties within that area as well to conform with our official plan.
Counselor.
Thank you. So when you say these areas as well, I just want to make sure it is clear. So when it says in the book, in the areas of the promenade and the MTSA, that we're only implementing a strategy on zero parking in only the MTS area that is encompassed by the promenade. I don't want this false conception that we're looking at implementing or investigating zero parking strategy in the promenade area, because I feel that council did not or was not interested in that.
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. And we will bring forward a work plan for council's consideration with aligning the scope of work. But that is the intent, to focus in on the major transit station area.
Counselor.
Thank you. Moving to the lay-by for the school at Tecumseh, and I'm glad to see that's actually happening. I think that's something that we had talked about being a very good solution to the issue that they're having, more so than I think the sidewalk and what it had caused at the time. Is the school board intending on contributing any portion of this lay-by, considering that this problem was created by the students, the families that attend this school?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, my understanding is the school board will not be contributing.
Counselor.
Thank you. Okay, I'm really disappointed in that. I just want to voice that I think that we pay enough taxes for our schools and education. And when it comes to safe entry and exit for students to go to school, especially on a school property, school board should be looking at contributing. It's my opinion. As far as the sidewalks at Edward, Young, and Dunning area, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Ramuno, I believe that area will be slated for a lot of development, upcoming development, although we don't necessarily have anything submitted. I believe that staff kind of know that's something that's in talks. And usually when these developments do come in, the developers usually pay for these or may pay for these sidewalks. And so I'm just wondering, is this something that we potentially should just hold off on, knowing that these major corners and this area will be developed in the near future where they could be paying for this kind of infrastructure as opposed to the taxpayer?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this time, we don't really have any major applications in that area. Again, if something, we can always before we actually release that project. If we do get a large application in that area, it's something that we could consider. But at this time, I think staff felt that based on the condition assessment of that area, it warranted moving forward with that project. But again, it's something that we can always look at, prior to actually releasing that project if we were to receive a significant application in the area.
Counselor?
Thank you. And I just want to apologize up front that I didn't have a chance to talk to you ahead of time to prepare you for these questions. However, this is just a project I feel that maybe we should have a further conversation about as far as the needs assessment with how many pedestrians are walking along this strip. If it's something that can wait, if there is a development that is to occur, to allow that to be paid by the developer. The other one was the active transportation facility, Bloomington to Go Bridge, both sides. And my first reaction is the region. Would the region not bear any responsibility on these main roads?
Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to ask our manager, Nancy Fleming, to jump in on this one. She'll have more detailed information.
Nancy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gilliland. So we've spoken to the region and they're looking at a cost sharing opportunity for a multi-use path in this area. But we need to have the design on our books, so to speak, in order for them to consider cost sharing.
Counselor?
Thank you. And what kind of cost sharing are we talking here? I just would assume that there would be majority should it be in the favor of the region covering this since it's on regional road, no?
Nancy?
Councillor Gilliland, we haven't gotten into the particulars of how much they would cover that. They do have a certain program each year annually that they cover for their local municipalities, a large chunk of that funding for multi-use path.
Counselor?
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair. So is this $200,000 that's being proposed just for the design of this multi-use path?
That's correct, Councillor Gilliland.
And if I may, is it typical that the town would be paying these types of design fees for this type of path on a regional road?
It's a very long stretch of sidewalk or multi-use path. So that is the amount that is equivalent for that design work.
Counselor?
Thank you, sir. I missed the very first thing you said. I think your mic came off. What was the question? Was it answer? Was it yes or was it no? That's typical. Was it typical for a town to be expected to pay the design fees for a multi-use path on a regional road?
Yes.
Nancy? Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Counselor?
Thank you. When can we expect, through you, Mr. Chair, to Nancy, I'm sorry, you're Miss Fleming. Just help me understand the process here. So if we're submitting this design phase for this multi-use path, what is the process and how long are we waiting for this implementation? Is this like a 2-year project, 3-year project, 4-year project? I know the region likes to take its time. If you could just kind of help me understand it, that would be great.
Nancy?
Sir Gilliland. So the first step now is, should council approve the design project, we would undertake detailed design next year. And that would commence right away in Q1 of 2024. We would have probably through to 60% design. So there's 30, 60, and 90% detailed design before we go to tender of the construction project. So we'll have a really good idea of how much the multi-use path will be and what that will look like with pricing that we can go to the region and request cost sharing for that multi-use path. And I believe that their program closes by the end of June. So the timing works out for us.
Counselor?
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair to Ms. Fleming. Are there granting opportunities to enhance the active transportation in respect to climate, whether it's the Green Municipal Fund or carbon tax, as much as I hate the carbon tax? Is there opportunity for us to seek funding for a project like this?
Nancy?
I'm sure there is. We will be exploring funding opportunities. So, the climate change impacts are being looked at through the asset management plan. There's multi-avenues right now through our energy and climate change program we have as well through the CCAF that council approved in September of 2022. There's opportunities to look at how climate change is impacting our infrastructure, especially our core infrastructure of stormwater, roads, and sewer and water.
Counselor?
Thank you. And would it be possible for council to see some sort of report on the success of some of the granting opportunities that we've achieved through for climate initiatives? This would be something I would expect to fall under that bucket. I know there's several other things that it goes towards, like other asset management plans, like natural capital assets or the energy project. Is there some sort of report or information that you can provide us that gives us this opportunity to see where we can have these savings? Because obviously I don't want to continually put this on the backs of the taxpayers if I don't have to, if we progressively and proactively know that we're going to get some of this back before we commit to something like this.
Nancy? Mayor Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this type of project, being active transportation, it would be a development charge funded project. So it would not actually be on the tax funded reserves. But until we actually have a project or a detailed design in place, we are not able to go and look for grants. So the grants generally cover a lot of the construction work. And to have that, we need to be essentially shovel ready to get started so that we can be prepared to use the grant as it comes available.
Counselor?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so within the climate initiative, is it something that perhaps we could have some sort of update report on to show us where we've been able to acquire some of this funding? Because I know that you have utilized the GMF fund, the Green Municipal Fund, for other projects. It'd be just nice to know that we've actually been able to take advantage of that.
Mayor Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we could put a report together on the grants that we've received and where we've been allocating them.
Perfect. Great.
Counselor?
Thanks.
Counselor Weiss?
Thank you. I was looking at the studies again and the other issues related to your budget, and through you to Mr. Immuno, you have this new FTE, the Enhance the Town's Response to Climate Change. First of all, I want to give you props for thinking locally in this global issue, and so good on you and the department. But could you give me an idea of what enhancing the town's response to climate change and the type of an individual that the skill set this person has in order to resolve that?
Romano?
Certainly, through Mr. Mayor. So we currently have a climate, energy and climate change analyst. So this would be an additional staff to lead that portfolio, a program manager. Right now, the current position supports and oversees over 20 energy and climate change related programs and projects that we currently have, on the go. So the position would assist in undertaking, the review and any funding opportunities for, future energy and emissions reduction plans and strategies. Again, the position would also assist the current position in collaborating with York Regional staff and other partners, again, to identify energy funding opportunities, et cetera. So I think the reason it's here is we do have a current position in place, but based on the number of different projects and strategies out there, that person needs assistance at a more senior level.
Counselor?
Thanks. That's very helpful. And I think it's absolutely right that we do that type of thing. So I guess I have to go back to this question that I asked Ms. Teamcamp before about the strategic plan again on the connectivity and mobility and our focus on traffic and primarily vehicular traffic as opposed to pedestrian traffic. And since the Metrolinx is bisecting this town in the east and west, and we've spent all of our time talking about vehicular traffic, I think it's time again to revisit the whole pedestrian walkways. We've had meetings with them. They're not going to do level crossings. So it's now clear that the only way to do this is through an underpass. We've done work on underpasses through at Cousins Drive, and it was back, I think, in I can't remember the date. I looked at them. But I think it's time for us to start thinking about studies in that direction and indeed trying to work with Metrolinx. We've talked about York Region trying to participate in these crossings, but also we need to look at partners because it's not going to be inexpensive, but I think Metrolinx has to take some responsibility for cutting our town in half from east to west from a pedestrian and an active transportation route. So I hope we can think about that from studies in the future. There's no in your studies, there's nothing having to do with the pedestrian underpasses in with respect to Metrolinx through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Weiss, is specifically the Cousins Drive underpass. That's been on the table, and we've had discussions with Metrolink staff in the past, but unfortunately, it's not a priority for them. They really don't have an appetite for that. But again, we do meet with them, monthly or every couple months, and we'll certainly raise that again as a initiative that council's interested in. And of course, we have relayed that message over the past few years, but last time we raised it, there was no appetite on their behalf, but we'll continue to have those discussions.
Counselor?
Okay, thank you. Guess we'll have to look at different strategies. Can't expect the same result from the same work that we do with it. So thanks, and that's it.
Thank you. Counselor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, we do have an environmental manager on staff who will shortly be returning from leave, who has climate change experience. I believe the position she came from involved that. Would she not be able to do any of that work?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so we certainly do have our staff person who's been with us for, and she's back now. She's been with us. So this is just, adding that additional staff. So our goal is to have two, a program manager and a climate change analyst. So they'd be working together.
Counselor?
Yeah.
So she has enough work as it is what you're saying to me?
She has
Mr. Romano?
more than enough, yes.
More than enough.
Counselor?
Thank you. And so what about the active transportation master plan? We hired a consultant. I think the town has a study back already. So when is council going to know about this?
Mr. Romano?
I think that is,
Fleming.
I'll pass that over to Nancy Fleming.
Nancy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardner. So we are just actually completing the active transportation master plan right now as we speak. It is going to be brought forth to council in Q1, probably January or February of 2024.
Counselor?
And it seems to me we do have some things in this budget that will speak to that.
Nancy?
Sorry, Councillor Gardner, I don't think I understand the question.
It seems to me there are a couple of initiatives in here in the budget already that will speak to that active transportation.
In regards to the streetscape plan, yes, things that are draft right now until the active transportation master plan can be brought forth to council for consideration.
Counselor?
Thank you. This through you, Mr. Mayor, this is to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, we had in 2022 climate change adaptation plan. I called you very late today. My apology. I don't even know if you've tried to call me back. So there were 23 initiatives in that plan. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it did an excellent job of breaking down our linear, what is going to be affected in our infrastructure by climate change. So it was the linear, the water facilities. We got that. That's quite a long time ago, and it was June 2022. What do we have in this budget that speaks directly to those initiatives?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I may have Nancy jump in again. You're correct. And it's a good question, Councillor Gardner. So that was approved by climate adaptation plan was approved in 2022. And the study did indicate there are a number of initiatives. I can't remember the number, but there are 2 or 3 tables worth that would be that staff advise council that moving forward, we would incorporate those initiatives or criteria as part of our future operating capital budget. So it's something that staff does take into account with respect to some of our, for instance, our road rehab or sewer rehab or stream channelization projects. with respect to materials and matters that should be part of that project or incorporated into the tender itself for that project. But again, Nancy may have some additional information. I don't think there's a specific capital project that I can point to that says, this in itself was identified in that report, but there are components of these projects that staff are factoring in those recommendations from the climate adaptation plan a couple of years ago, moving forward with any infrastructure projects.
Counselor?
So my point is that the point I'd like to make is that we hired a consultant. They came forward and sorry, it's actually 43. They called them action items. Very specific. Fortunately, we had nothing high risk, but we do have a lot of things moderate risk. And for example, the linear assets that would be stormwater and roads. We're going to have these very intense rains. We're going to have these great fluctuations in temperatures. The roads are going to buckle. We've already been through, this is the second budget. We haven't had anything that was recommended in the budget. Of the 43 items, there hasn't been anything to date that's been put into a budget. I mean, why would we hire consultants to tell us these things if we're not going to go forward with them?
Nancy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardner. So it's actually rather multifaceted how we've incorporated the strategic objectives from the CCAF. So a lot of those climate change impacts and initiatives were very high level, but we've taken those and we've incorporated them into our asset management plan, which will be brought forward to you in early in 2024 for consideration. And that's through our risk management lens, through not just condition, but criticality of our infrastructure in certain areas. So we've incorporated it there. In regards to our design phases at 30, 60, and 90%, we've incorporated those climate lens considerations that those recommendations came forward, especially as it relates to stormwater, because we have larger storm events now. So we're looking at capacity. Our water and wastewater master plan is going to be looking at our condition, capacity, and climate change impacts through that study that we're going to be undertaking in 2024.
Counselor?
Thank you. And I'm glad to know that. I would really, I would really like to see that in our projects. I would like to see a notation informed by, because I'm sure we spent a lot of money on that consultant, and actually they gave excellent, they did excellent work. So I'd like to see where that work shows up. Thank you.
Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Just further to the active transportation master plan that's underway. As you all know, we do have a committee that deals with that, and it's been at the committee twice. I'm surprised staff didn't mention that. In fact, last week we had a full working session on prioritizing the areas of town that we felt were important to deal with first. And we dealt with all of the crossings, including Cousins and many other aspects. Klaus is in the audience and was an active member and participant of those strategic plans and is a committee member. So it is well on its way. My understanding that it will come back to the committee in the next phase and then to council. To what we're doing here tonight, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Ramuno, I guess, or whoever, once that's done, how do we capture a lot of the capital projects that will inevitably come out of that master plan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, again, you're correct, Councilor Gallo. We forgot to mention that it's coming. It's been in front of the advisory committee once, and it's coming back in, I believe, December. So I think once council considers that master plan in the new year, I think any any action items moving forward for additional capital projects would have to be considered as part of the future budget year discussions.
Counselor?
So just to, what would be the process through Mr. Chair to Mr. Ramuno on, there'll be quite a few things coming out of that master plan. And I guess if council ends up approving it, how do we capture all of those projects?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and again, Nancy can jump in. I think once we get to that stage with the plan in front of council, I'm sure there'll be some discussion. My suggestion would be for staff then perhaps to, at that time or come back with a future report to provide a priority list of what we feel are those key items that we want to implement moving forward for council's consideration and direction.
Counselor?
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. 6.1.8 corporate items, binder tab 13. Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Okay, good evening. This is the last of the departmental presentations. This is the corporate items, or as we often refer to as the home for everything that doesn't fit naturally in a department. So this provides an overview of the budget by program. So obviously these are not divisions like it is with the rest of the budget, but these are more strategic areas that we look at. So we have some items in corporate management, which includes our corporate accounts, which is generally essentially the home for things that don't fit anywhere else, essentially. We have salary management, which handles things like retiree benefits or any other strategic high-level adjustments that we may have. Our contingency is our multi-year contingency. So in 25 and 26, we've set aside a little bit of money in case something happens. We did this in the last budget too. We did not predict a pandemic. I'm not predicting one this time. I'm hoping it's more stable as we go along. We have our recovery from user rates. So this captures how much we're recovering from water, wastewater, stormwater services. This is generally the overhead. So this is a portion of various people's positions throughout the organization. Fiscal strategy gets into our reserve management strategy, our contributions to asset management reserves and other capital reserves. Investment management is the portion of the budget that we pull into operating. So that's the portion of the interest that we pull into the operating budget. And then debt management is our debt repayment. You'll notice that our expenditures are usually generally higher than what our actual net piece is. And the reason for that is we have a lot of DC funded debt. Non-tax levy items. These are tax items that aren't necessarily associated directly with the levies. So these could be penalties on taxes, supplemental taxes, which we contribute most of that to the growth of new reserve, and other things such as payments in lieu of taxes or any adjustments or losses that we see. So we look at the changes, the budget for corporate accounts. Some of the changes include adjustments to the retiree benefits, which we have seen increasing a little bit over the last couple of years. We have tax levy stabilization. So we did have a draw that was included in last year's budget. So we're reversing some of that out and making some adjustments there. And then there's the recovery from water user rates and stormwater rates that we have here as well. And I believe building rates is also included there too. I'm getting the nod from the gallery. Capital operating costs. So we have the user rate recovery portion for the financial systems. The other piece that was in the finance department budget. And this is the financial system costs which relate to the user rate, those incremental costs. Fiscal strategies. So this section has a little bit more in it than what it typically does. So that first line is our 1% levy increase that we add in each year. And that's the contribution that goes to capital asset reserves. The next amount, the 895,000, this is a significant portion of the savings that we could be looking at from the producer responsibility for waste. So what we've done is we've taken most of that projected savings and we've identified it as a contribution to asset management reserves, since as we know, our asset management reserves are underfunded, and it also protects us against any risk on an operating budget should we not recognize all of that savings. The other savings that you saw in the operational services budget was the savings on the completion of the LED debts. So we have one payment in 26, and then that completes the debt payment. So we will also see another savings of the equivalent amount in the following year as well, because we will then have no payments. The total amount that we pay on an annual basis is essentially double the 183.7 thousand, and then the multi-year contingency, as I mentioned. And that is it for corporate accounts.
Thank you. We had a motion to receive. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Weiss, any comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Just if you could clarify again the net tax levy in your overall operating financial summary, and it goes from 35 to 39 to 56% in 2026. And if you could just, in layman terms, explain that to the public, why the operating appears to double within that short time frame. Summary, rather.
Ray Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there are a couple of things that are happening in here. One of them is we do have some debt that is being paid off, some DC funded debt. So even though like some of the costs come out, the equivalent amount of revenue comes out. So that affects those non-tax funded revenues that are included in there. While it's equivalent amounts, it still changes that mix overall as to what proportionality is covered from non-tax revenues. The other piece is that we do have on an annual basis, we are increasing the levy by 1% for increasing those contributions to asset management reserves and other capital reserves. And that is coming straight off the tax levy. And as well in 2026, the bigger jump there is because that allocation of the producer responsibility for waste. So that was a significant portion where that is all tax funded savings that is now going into the reserves, and same with the LED. So these are the things that are changing that mix overall.
Councillor.
Thank you. Whether you had mentioned some capital projects or debt repayment, is there anything in specific to that that you could point to?
Ray Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So for the debt repayment that we look at in the tab 5 on pages 5, 9, and 510, it speaks more to what's included in our debt repayment. And there's a chart on page 510. I believe that I presented it last week at General Committee, and it shows the debt repayment amounts by funding source. It's a line graph. And as you can see, the development charge debt is kind of coming up and then it goes down again. And that impacts some of that mix there.
Councillor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As far as the development charge forecast, then obviously we see quite the dip in 2030. Should we be concerned?
Ray Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So for the projects that are happening further out in the plan, we still have time to adjust our 10-year plan. Our development charge forecast is fairly conservative, but there have been changes recently to the overall legislation. But we can adjust our capital budget on an annual basis. We only commit to so many projects each year, and those are the projects that have the capital budget authority, whereas there's a number of projects that are still further out. And I think there is one significantly large roads DC funded project that's in around the 2029, 2030 period of time. So if we needed to, we could adjust the timing of that, or we could look at other financing strategies for that too.
Councillor.
Thank you. And would you be referring to a major recreation center when you talk about what the next major capital project may be?
Ray Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the one I'm speaking about that's later in the plan, that is the over or underpass at Cousins Drive.
Councillor.
Thank you. I misinterpreted that. Through Mr. Chair, Ms. Wayne Van Kessel, just quick comments. If you have any to share, and I apologize, I didn't ask you this sooner, but MPAC hasn't done any reassessment since 2016. And as thus they had paused it for 2020 during the pandemic. at the latest AMO and FCM. That's something that they had talked about, that they are undergoing these assessments, and some municipalities and homeowners will be affected by some of this change. How do you feel about the MPAC assessment and how that can reflect on our tax levy and the residents here once that assessment is done?
Maria Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So once the MPAC assessment is done, if your value of your home changes at the same pace as the rest of the assessment base, it doesn't really have impact on the share of the taxes in which you receive. What impacts it is on if the value of your home is significantly increasing at a higher rate or not as high a rate as the rest of the homes. Because what we do is that amount that we get for that current value assessment, it's not that we apply the tax rate to that. We use that to develop the ratio and how we distribute taxes among all the properties. So just because the value of your home increases does not necessarily mean you're going to be paying more taxes. It depends on how it goes up relative to everyone else. It takes the tax ratios into account, which are set by the region. And then it also takes into account the amount that levied that's increased in the municipal budgets that are affecting property taxes. So it's a bit more complicated in that we do have some tools on the website. If residents are asking and wanting to learn about how the assessment affects them, there's some short videos on there that explains it quite well.
Counselor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I've seen those videos. I do understand that it's about leveling out and not necessarily because it's increased, that you automatically will be increasing your tax levy. Although with a volatile market, and we've seen a lot of homes go up in value and down in value in ways that don't necessarily meet what the market says it should be, it just really, I guess it causes a red flag in my mind of how that may translate once those MPAC assessments are actually done. We really don't know what that's going to look like. And so I thought maybe you would have some insight of what we could prepare for, especially as we're trying to look at, 3 years ahead for a 3 capital year plan and down the road for 10 years.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the latest I heard through the MFOA organization was that MPAC may be taking a little bit of a pause because of some of the volatility in the market. So we'll have to wait and see when those assessments do happen and what the market's looking at that time. But we can definitely take a look at the impact on average typical homes across the community to see what that looks like when it does come forward.
Counselor.
No, that's great. I appreciate that. It's comfort knowing that at least those steps are being taken. And as homeowners are making renewals on their mortgages right now, it's definitely a lot of pressure on all families across Aurora and Ontario and Canada. And hopefully we can find some easement in our tax operating expenses or capital projects so we can ensure that we're not putting too much pressure on the taxpayer. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Thompson, Councilor Gardner, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.